think it's 7 o'clock on TV time at least. Happy New Year. Welcome everyone to the new year. We'll call to order the Board of Appeals. I'll let everyone know the board does not write zoning ordinances, but does have the authority to grant relief where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the request variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant variances. Please note, right now we are down 2 board members, so we only have 7 board members. Even though it looks like we have a full lot up here, there's actually only 7 of us are the board members. So please note that any order of the board is valid for a period of 1 year. If you'd like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of full board, you must inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing. Petitioners shall do their best to limit presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in a public hearing shall do their best to limit comments to 3 minutes. All right, as stated, we're down 2 board members, but we do have a new person. So, Mr. Isaac Wolf, if you'd like to say a few words or introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. My name is Isaac Wolf. I will be a Royal Oak resident of 5 years in May, so May of 2019 is when I moved to the city. I own a house here. I love it here, and I'm honored to be here. So I'm a planner by trade, so I know a lot of what you guys are going through because I've been on your side of the house. And with that, I'm gonna, just say thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, approval of minutes for December 14th, 2023. Is there any amendments? If not, motion to approve them? Mr. Reddy.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Mr. Moore raised his hand first. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. There is no unfinished business from last year, so we will go on to new business, case number 24-01-01. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
The subject property is located on the east side of Woodward Avenue between Chester and Hunter, and there's a new Shell's convenience station and fuel pumps. The building was constructed and finished in 2017. There are 12 fuel pumps, and the building is just shy of 7,000 square feet of usable floor area. It has a convenience store that sells alcohol, and there are 2 carry-out restaurants inside. All of the uses on the site currently require 35 parking spaces, and the approved site plan, or as the site is now, provides 39 parking spaces, so they conform to the number of required parking spaces. At the November Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did approve the construction of a separate building on the south side of the property adjacent to the Chester Road right-of-way. And that's for a Tim Hortons fast food restaurant. It has a walk-up window and it also obviously has a drive-through window. It does not have any interior customer seating. The inside of the building is exclusively for employees only. That building is has 647 square feet of usable floor area, so it requires by itself 4 parking spaces. Obviously, in order to accommodate that building, where on the site currently there are parking spaces, so those parking spaces some of them are eliminated to make arrangements for the placement of the building, drive aisles, etc. The site, as approved recently by the Planning Commission, provides 27 parking spaces. So the existing convenience store plus now the carry-out restaurant requires 39 parking spaces. So they're deficient and they're seeking a variance of 12 parking spaces. Okay. The approved design requires the use of the adjacent alleys for vehicles to stack or queue in line for service at that drive-through window. And the zoning ordinance actually has a language in it that strictly prohibits stacking spaces from occupying or extending into a street or an alley. So they're seeking a waiver of that prohibition. And the zoning ordinance does require a dedicated and continuous escape lane that's directly adjacent to the stacking lane. And the purpose of the escape lane is to allow drivers the ability to bypass those waiting for service at the point of the window. It allows continuous traffic flow on site. And so the approved design doesn't provide for an adjacent escape lane. The petitioner has addressed in their letter how they believe that the design of the site functions to have an escape lane. So that was noted in their letter, and they'll also elaborate that when they come forward. And they are seeking a variance to waive that dedicated and continuous escape lane that's directly adjacent to the stacking lane. If approved tonight, the petitioner would proceed forward to the City Commission in order to have a modified license agreement in order to use the public alley for stacking spaces, menu boards, landscaping, screening walls, and also the reconfiguration of the alley at Chester. And I think we can get into some of the conversation as to why the Planning Commission required the petitioner to redesign the configuration of the alley at Chester when the petitioner steps forward, and we continue to have a conversation about how the site functions, despite the fact that it doesn't have that continuous dedicated escape lane, and it's using the alley for these required stacking spaces.
Real quick, I just noticed that we lost connection to up there, so I don't know if they lost us or not.
Watch for a minute.
I don't know if that matters or if we should hold off for a minute and see if they reconnect.
Let's make a phone call.
Oh, it's back
Hey,
up.
we're back.
There we go.
The man behind the curtain fixed it.
Wizard of Oz.
All right. Any
We'll see what else
questions?
he's able to fix tonight.
Any questions for staff? We had a couple over here. Go ahead, Nancy.
I just
Ms. Robinson.
was curious, how many, like in that place where there's going to be no escape lane, how many cars will be like kind of stuck in that no escape lane area?
Sure, maybe we can zoom in a little tighter on that, and it'll illustrate that there are 4 spaces. So I referenced, we'll get to the conversation about the reconfiguration of the driveway. I think now is the appropriate time. The original design that was taken to the Planning Commission showed that alleyway being closed. And the Planning Commission required that it be reconfigured so that it's narrower and that it only turn westward toward Woodward Avenue. And their thought behind that is that if someone's waiting, at some point they'll have the ability to flow out of the site. I will have on Chester Avenue 2 signs that say "Do not enter," so that it's known that that's not the way to get into the drive-through, to the drive-through facility. Yeah, so it's sort of like a little offshoot, but it's not a continuous, dedicated, and adjacent escape lane. There are 4 stacking spaces that can be accommodated in the alley before they make that turn to then go toward the building to the point of the service window.
Mr.
Thank
Clay.
you.
Mr. Murphy, I believe I know the answer, but can they not use the 12 spaces at the pumps as part of the parking or towards a portion of the parking?
That's correct. That's correct.
I mean, I frequent this site quite a bit, and it seemed I either park adjacent to the building or at the pumps, and I think 90% of the customers do too. I don't think anyone ever parks out to the south. So but they can't use that towards any of their parking?
Well, it's not separate in the sense that someone could park there
Sure,
and
of
just
course, of course.
walk into either of these facilities and not get any fuel at the pump. But you're right, most logically, most people get their fuel and then go inside the building to pick up whatever odds and ends they might need.
Thank you.
Mr. Reddy.
Okay. My question was, is the alley considered part of the property, the petitioner's property, or is it considered city?
It's still a open city alley. They would simply be looking for a license agreement to allow for it to function as their stacking spaces, but it would still technically be open. So that That is certainly a requirement in order to allow things like the fire apparatus, some emergency vehicles, delivery vehicles, refuse pickup, to be able to use it when there are off hours and vehicles aren't stacked there. I'll let the petitioners speak to some of the logic, but all of the sites on Woodward Avenue are fairly shallow. They don't have a lot of depth. And in order to site a building on the property and get the appropriate turning radius and the number of stacking spaces, obviously their logic in wanting to request a license agreement to use the alley for stacking spaces is that it allows for them to have more vehicles on their site than vehicles backing up onto Woodward Avenue, which you might see in other more popular drive-through facilities in the area. So they can speak to that, but I believe that's a lot of the logic associated with it is to, yes, we know we're going to be busy, we plan on having fast service, and in order to accommodate the design to allow for enough vehicles not to back up onto Woodward, this is the design that was thought up.
Just one, I guess I had a similar question, more of an observation. I think I studied every alley along Woodward today, and most of them appear to be like original concrete or decent shape or somewhat broken up, but this alley is pristine. So it looks like they put a substantial investment when they initially built out this property. It looks like it's new asphalt and well-maintained. So it looks like they put some money into this alley, that's for sure.
I'm sure they'd be happy to express the dollar amount and time and commitment, and they also did install, at the time that they were approved for this, the building and the fuel pumps, they were required to put in a masonry screening wall on the opposite side of the alley, so they did pay for that as well. This site was previously a filling station that had site contamination, and the petitioner came forward to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and worked to clean up the site to construct what is there today.
Thank you.
Mr. Wolf?
So I'm assuming that any emergency response or anything like that can go, quote unquote, the wrong way in if need be, or how would they get to the site if there are 4 cars there?
Mm-hmm. We did certainly show the design to the fire department and police department and Department of Public Service, and none of the offices had any objection to the design. There is the central drive aisle off of Woodward Avenue that allows vehicles to come into the site and then we'll say split and go either north or south when they get to the alley. And then obviously there's a 20-foot wide drive off of Hunter, so that does allow for vehicles to come down the alley. But they didn't have any objection to the design to slightly narrow the entrance off of Chester. They felt as though they would still be able to get in if they needed to.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, the petitioner may come forward, present your case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm Dennis Cowan with Plunkett Cooney, and I'm representing the petitioner this evening. And first of all, Happy New Year to all of you. And Mr. Wolf, welcome to the team. So we do have with us, we brought the whole team tonight, our team, the principals, Leif Kassab and Ken Lucia. If you ever go there, you'll see Ken. He's always behind the counter. I think he lives there. And then Rafael Putris is our contractor, and Scott Tuziant is from Boss Engineering, and he was responsible for the outlay and the positioning of the building and things of that nature. So Mr. Murphy stole a little bit of my thunder, so if I repeat some of the things he said, because in my mind I had a way to present. But here's what's the most important thing. First of all, as has been mentioned, it's been open since 2017. It was a contaminated site. The owner did step up and develop a brownfield and did clean up the site, which is a very positive thing for the city. This proposal is very unique. This will be the first of its kind Tim Hortons single, what I call mini drive-through of 650 square feet. There are some that are in process of being planned. There's only actually a couple up in the country. There are many in Canada because If you don't know, I remember Tim Horton was a hockey player for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the late 50s and early 60s. He was a heck of a defenseman, quite frankly, and then got into the coffee business. So as a result, because of the size, one thing we want to make absolutely clear, this will be a limited menu. It's basically going to be coffee, beverages, and donuts, and some egg-type sandwiches in the morning. If you go to the Tim Hortons in Royal Oak, like on 11 Mile, they have a real broad menu, sandwiches, all kinds of things. That's not going to be here. It's going to be very limited. And as a result, that's to keep things moving. And part of what keeps things moving today and is going to be utilized by this site will be the mobile ordering and pickup. That's become something that's very popular, especially among coffee drinkers. If you go anywhere on Woodward, whether it's Starbucks, Dunkin', whatever, there's a lot of people walking in and their order's already ready for them. So that platform is very important, and that will be utilized here to keep the vehicles moving. So the other issue that you should know about is, because the question came up at planning, well, why don't you just put it inside? In the post-COVID world, all fast food, all coffee is demanding and requiring to have a drive-through facility. You will see some, those are what we call legacy facilities, that they were done 10 years ago or whatever. But as you may recall, in COVID, the only lifeline a lot of us had to food was through the drive-through, because the inside of buildings were shut down. You couldn't go in anything. So as a investment and really practical operational strategy, they're all requiring that. So that gives you the opportunity in the creation of kind of this mini concept at gas stations that have the room, filling stations and other places that have the room. So we were very pleased to go before the Planning Commission not too long ago in November and received a 5-to-1 approval. And as Mr. Murphy mentioned, the Planning Commission came up with what we agree was an excellent idea of not closing off Chester and of utilizing that for an escape lane exit only. I think it should be said that alleyway is an escape lane today. People drive out of there, go north or south. Sometimes it might be for various reasons. Some of them live in the neighborhood and want to go back to where they live on Chester, or I'm forgetting the street name all of a sudden.
Hunter.
Pardon me?
Hunter.
Hunter, yes, I should know that from the gas station. I mean not the gas station, from the car wash when we did that. But in any event, it's an escape lane today. Cars come and go on both sides of the street today, but mostly exit, and it's really not an entrance way if you sat there for any period of time and watched. So let's talk a little bit about the variances. I'm going to take them in two buckets: the parking